take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please check out our website, truthortalk.com, where you can find our stuff that we got going on over there, products, and we have a couple of small products, and we have our essays and our archive shows and everything like that on our show. We have Eileen Danneman is going to be on our show today, and we had her on once before, but it was a group interview with her and our friend Leslie Carol Botha, and so it was hard to. I mean, they're two very, strong, powerful women. Yeah. And we were having a hard time getting into questions because they were just both so full of information. Yeah, so we've brought Leslie back on a couple times, and now we're bringing Eileen back because we wanted to ask her more about her areas of expertise. She's really, really interesting, too. She runs the website, the Vaccine Liberation Army. She's been on the vaccine issue for a long time, and before that, she was even she was on the issue of the National Coalition of Women, the NCOW, and she's been doing transcendental meditation for many, many years. She's a practicer of that, and so I think we didn't get a chance to ask her about that at all when she was on our show before. So I'm really looking forward to what that is, asking her about what it is and how that works. Because I've heard her say before, I think she said it on our show the last time she was on, she feels it's benefits her spiritually or mindfully and also her body. She doesn't take vitamin supplements, she doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. She doesn't need to because she uses transcendental meditation. It's kind of dope, right?
Yeah, it is. I think the more people wake up, we're going to realize that, basically we need simple things. Life doesn't have to be so complicated, And I'm saying wake up in the sense being more conscious about the world. And I think a lot of people I don't think people are bad. I think we do things without really thinking things through. And sometimes I hate saying awake. I mean, in our community, I guess that maybe people understand, but I feel bad. I feel like it's a bit cultish. Yeah. Everybody's like, "Are you awake, man?" I'm awake. Are you awake? Oh, he's awake. He told me that. You know what I mean? But right. But I'm really, I guess, put in simpler terms is that when people are conscious, about the world and how we've got so many distractions. People have to work. We're in this money matrix where people have to make money to survive. So people is focused a lot on making money,
Right.
And they're not thinking, but they're making money to pay for all of the complicated things and habits that they have, and then it just kind of, what I'm trying to say, they don't really have time to, I'm just reiterating what I'm saying basically. They don't have time to basically kind of do research or really think about what they're doing or, unless they have a tragedy.
Right.
That makes them focus and kind of wake up and step out of it and be more awake. A tragedy or something necessarily maybe doesn't necessarily have to be tragedy, but something that is very just eye-opening,
It's like a wake-up call.
Yeah, like a wake-up call, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be tragic, but most times it seems like it is.
Yeah, because I mean, that's something that sort of jars you and takes you, it makes you come into focus on what, is going on around you. Because like you said, people are working, they're trying to survive, they're distracting themselves by, desiring things that they don't need necessarily, but then they're also, even just to survive though, is so difficult in this world. And I know a number of people who I consider to be very, very, very intelligent people who do not wish to understand a lot of this, not because they're stupid or because they are closed-minded, but because they are working and they feel like, well, I'm working a lot, and then I'm really very helpless to do anything anyway, so what's the point? You know, why am I even going to find out what's going on here, because it's not going to make any difference anyway, and there's nothing I can really do about it. So I'd rather just watch TV, I'd rather just watch sports, I'd rather just, do what I was doing anyway and not really go down any of these rabbit holes, and not learn about it. But I think what we're saying is that I don't really necessarily find that to be true. I think even if you, I think there's always something that you can do. And if you go into things life unaware, you can really, the number of rabbit holes that we've gone down as far as like just the medical establishment alone, you could really like mess yourself up by not understanding that. I know you don't know that, but you really could. I mean, when it comes to vaccines or, these pharmaceuticals and things like that, and maybe you're aware of that. Maybe you're going to go, well, I don't take vaccines, I don't take pharmaceuticals, but then, there's other things that come into play with all that. You could be finding yourself walking into a pothole and you don't even know. So I don't know. I think it's always good. It's better to know than to not know. And then it certainly doesn't...
It'll make your life more complicated in the end, I think, if you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it will make your life more complicated, and then you'll be shocked by things, if you go through life just being unaware of how things work.
Yeah, you'll be easily jarred and steered into fear, and, and one thing we always talk about, I think we're both grateful about this, that we started doing these shows on cancer, and how it took away our fear, because that's the reality for most people. Because of, the environment, the food that we're eating, the stress that we're surrounding ourselves with in society. Now we were talking the other day, everybody at least knows somebody that has died of cancer or has cancer or they have it themselves. It's not rare like it used to be anymore. So.
Right. It's true, and it's not rare like it used to be, and, I think, and then sadly more and more people are going to be affected, like my son, with autism or some kind of neurological deficit, and that's what's going on because of the vaccines, which our next guest is very, 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 very well aware of, Eileen Danneman. But, and this occurred to me the other day. I was at the pool with my son, and I realized that, as we were sitting there, there were 4 kids that came and went, came in inside the pool and left the pool, during the time that we were there. Of those children, 3 of them were on the autistic spectrum. How did I know this? Well, one of them I knew because he was in my son's class. He's a fellow student in his class, so I knew he was autistic. And then the other, I saw that she was with her therapist. I could tell that she was working with the therapist. It was a little girl. And I saw her throw a tantrum as they were leaving the pool. And that's not necessarily a sign of autism, because a lot of kids will throw a tantrum if they have to leave somewhere they don't want to leave. But it was, because I could tell she was her therapist just by the way she was talking to her and the way she was dressed at the pool. She was like professional. So, and then my son. So there were 4 kids. 3 of them that came and went. 3 of them were on the autistic spectrum. And I went, wow, that's a lot of kids. I mean, that's really, there was a time where nobody knew including myself, what autism was. And then there was this movie with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman called Rain Man, and that's when most of us first heard about it. And the film came out, and I think that to this day, a lot of people still think that that's what the image of autism looks like. But when I was at the swimming pool with these kids, I don't necessarily think that the layman eye would have noticed necessarily, but I did, because I just know what that looks like. I could tell that the lady that was with that girl wasn't her mom, that was her therapist. And I could tell that, and I knew the other kid. I knew him from my son's class. And, it's just little differences. Once you start to dissect it, you go, well, the difference is, little differences. This kid had a hard time transitioning. She threw a tantrum. Other kids might do that too, but, you could tell, like, she just was having a really, really difficult time. She didn't understand why she had to leave. And then the kid in my son's class.
It's morely a toxicity issue. Mm-hmm. Because vaccines are toxic.
Right.
Because I've gotten into people, and they were like, well, if vaccines cause autism, then everybody should have autism, right? Because everybody gets vaccinated. And then you start you talk to them about the new vaccines that are added, the vaccine schedule, other factors that factor into just an overload of being poison, basically, a poison that we're putting in the system. And then you also have to realize not only maybe you don't come out with autism, but you come with asthma or allergies or some kind of other autoimmune dysfunction, fibromyalgia, and or God knows, there are people that you can look at lectures, and doctors are actually linking vaccines to all these things too, not just autism. But it does. I mean, I'm not disputing you. Of course, I agree that that's one of the things that vaccines cause. But
yeah, no. I mean to say that because I don't want to point to everybody's experience. Some people will say, well, I didn't vaccinate my kids and they became autistic anyway, or some people will say, I did vaccinate my kids, but I don't believe that that's what caused their autism. I think they were born with it. I don't believe that they're born with it. I'm sorry to say I don't. I think that if you had vaccine when you were pregnant, or if you had a vaccine at birth right at the hospital, then you can't rule those things out. But if you hadn't vaccinated your kid too, then there's also still the chance of the vaccines having caused the autism via you when you were a child, because like you said, it's a toxicity issue. And so that your toxicity levels are going to transfer to your child, the toxicity of the mother and the father, and is going to transfer to the child.
Or did you have mercury in your your teeth and stuff like that too? I mean,
right. And there's other factors as well, but this is where we're seeing the huge spike in the rise of autism is through vaccination. We're not seeing it necessarily. I mean, we're seeing other things happen across the board with the pharmaceutical industry, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk to Eileen about today, was because she's been doing some research on this CP450 or the cytochrome P450, which is an enzyme mutation that so many people have that basically it makes it difficult for them, if not impossible, to metabolize certain synthetics in the environment. So, in other words, synthetics meaning things that are not natural, things that are pharmaceuticals or would fall into that category, and so would vaccines. And so, we're doing a whole series on antidepressant drugs, but it's not just antidepressant drugs we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the whole gamut. But the reason that we brought this came to our attention because most of the research on this enzyme deficiency has surrounded these antidepressant drugs, because we're trying to figure out why do some people have certain reactions and other people don't. And so this is one of the things that most people are confused about when it comes to vaccines and autism as well. It's like, well, why do some kids become autistic and other kids don't? Well, because some kids have an immediate reaction and some kids have a delayed reaction. And that depends on their ability to metabolize these synthetics. So we're thinking that, this is a big piece of the puzzle, people understanding better how, people are able to, some people are going to get sick later. They might, like you said, it could be asthma, it could be fibromyalgia, it could be later in life. You could be in your 50s or 60s and get cancer, and it was caused by your childhood vaccinations, and you don't know it. You don't necessarily know how to correlate that, but you have still never metabolized those. You've still never detoxed from that toxicity. And so that's just lying dormant in your body this whole time. And that's what's causing it. So there's and then again, you may never experience it, but you're going to transfer it to your offspring. So and then you're going to go, oh, well, I didn't vaccinate them, but they still had a problem. So that's why we're trying to dig deeper into this, because it is quite interesting. And, sometimes people have a hard time understanding, well, why do some people get this way and some people don't? And certainly vaccines are causing autism. I say that with no hesitation at all. But I don't think it's the only thing that's causing autism. And I certainly think that, these antidepressant drugs are causing psychosis and causing aggression and violent behavior and these other kinds of things. And we got to ask ourselves, well, why do certain people get that way and other people don't? Other people take them and they go, I love it. Prozac was great for me. I was so happy. I was in such a good mood, blah, 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 blah. So I don't know. I don't know how some people get into it, but some people do. Do you know anybody who's taken that kind of stuff?
At the moment? Or who has taken them?
Either one.
Yeah, just when I was teaching, I didn't know exactly what they were on, the exact drugs, but I knew that they were being medicated, maybe for being hyper and stuff, and then I saw some of the kids just do really some psychotic things. I think I saw some about them on the air. I went, I remember when I subbed for LASD, and I made a lot of my money doing special ed, because a lot of people didn't want to do special education. And anyway, so I went to this one class, and there's this boy, maybe no more than like 4 or 5 years old. He's really young. He has all of his teeth. First of all, I noticed all of his teeth are like gone, like
oh my God,
like Jaws from, but not the shark, but from James Bond. You ever seen Jaws? How his teeth were all silver?
Yeah.
Yeah, his teeth, his whole mouth, every single one of his teeth was silver. And then I lean over. He's a cute little boy, and I was like, hi. And I was like, I lean over, and he's like, ah! And he's like, just jumped on me.
Wow.
He jumped on me. And then later I found that his teeth were like that because he knocked him out from just like banging his head and just jumping on things.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I know he was on medication. I don't think he was autistic. Maybe. I don't know. I know he was being medicated, though, because they would have to take breaks to take their medicine, They have to go to the nurse's office and stuff. So that's how I know. But I didn't get a look at his chart, and at the time I didn't really know what to make of it. I was just trying to survive. And some of these kids too, not necessarily like the mentally handicapped kids, but they call them emotionally disturbed kids. And some of classrooms, I would have to actually have I call them a bodyguard. They don't call them a bodyguard. I think they call them like their one-to-one or something like that. But these guys were like, they would usually pick people that were huge and that kind of wrestle them to the ground in case they got out of control. It was the funniest thing. And I remember I had one kid in my class, and I made him mad. I think he was being a smart aleck. I was just trying to get the class in order so we can do the next thing, and he made me mad. So but I kind of like outsmarted him. That makes sense. And he got mad, and he just got up, and he was just like, he just stood there for a minute, and I thought, okay, it was okay. And then he just got up, and he started like jumping on the desk, and he started like, not like, I don't think he was like throwing a tantrum. He just couldn't control his rage. And he was running around the classroom, and then he went for the box of scissors, and this is like in kindergarten. So, like how, I don't know, in kindergarten they have those the scissors, you put the scissors through these little holes and they swing back and forth. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway, he got the box of scissors, and he was like chasing people with it. So I had to like jump on him and hold him down to the floor. Wow. And it was so devastating because he was crying, and like, I felt bad, like I wanted to cry. And then, and they were like, oh yeah, he needs to go to the office to take his medication. I don't think he took his medication today. But,
right, and then that's a good point, because then sometimes it's the medication or it's the coming off of the medication. They have a crazy reaction, So if he hadn't taken it, they were like, he was losing it because he was having detox or something. I mean, those are certainly possibilities. And the more we're learning about it, it's like, so many of these so-called, psychiatric disorders are actually didn't exist or were really, really rare, or even if they did exist, they didn't necessarily involve violent behavior until they started inventing these pharmaceutical drugs to so-called treat them. It's like it's so it's so backwards. It's so 1984 that it's ridiculous. It's like, it's such a cliche to keep saying it, but it's so true. Because how, I mean, schizophrenia, for example, was something that was considered very, very rare. I think it's like 1 in 100 now. People suffer schizophrenia in this country. And, it's really pretty common, and it's, or 1 in 2, I'm going to have to look that up really quick because I'm not sure if I'm accurate, but it's very common in this country. And it didn't used to be associated with violence. It was actually considered something that you could not easily, but you could reverse. It wasn't necessarily seen as something that was lifelong. You could actually have it and then treat it, and it would go away.
Yes.
And they used to know that, diets and certain types of dietary interventions and things like that would actually help you reverse the effects of it. And those are usually, I think in the 1950s, there was an experiment done on a mental institution, and they used patients with schizophrenia. The specific carbohydrate diet, which is a grain-free diet, high in beneficial fats like bone broth, and they put people on this diet, and many of them recovered from schizophrenia. So it was considered something that you could get rid of. And it didn't have any association with violence. It wasn't like you were more likely to be violent if you were schizophrenic. You just had, voices in your head, or you didn't, know how to act right, or you didn't necessarily, you weren't, quote, normal. So, but it was rare, and it wasn't, and so then once they introduced the anti-psychotic drugs, then all of a sudden association with violence comes about. So now schizophrenia is seen as something that people do, and they get crazy. They get violent. But are they? Or is it schizophrenia? Really? Or is it that they have some sort of toxicity? Thereby a healthy nutritional diet that feeds the brain beneficial fats is actually going to reverse it. and the last thing you want to do is put somebody on any kinds of medication that will actually take their dementia or their delusions and then turn them into a violent person. So it's really, very obvious once you start looking at these things that that's what's going on. But then, of course, this isn't the mainstream narrative, and they want to label all these disorders and make everybody afraid of everybody else. Oh, they're crazy, they're schizophrenic, they're blah, blah, blah. And how we aren't really crazy about the DSM and how they just basically, because it doesn't really mean anything in the real world. You know what I mean? It's like it just sort of.
Well, it's based on opinion of people's opinions. It's very subjective, and when something is subjective, it's open to interpretation. It's open to bias. And that can be very destructive, especially if people have sinister motives in mind, or they have very selfish motives in mind, or they just because then it basically becomes one person's word against another person's, even though they supposedly are a doctor,
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's in that when it comes to these psychiatric disorders, they're subjective, very, very subjective, especially because you can't take necessarily a blood test or it's not like something that you can put in a petri dish and analyze in a lab. It's something that you would actually, it's your opinion, or a group of scholars and whatever their professional opinion on what these disorders are, and so based on that, they put these people on medications. And these medications, they don't have any way of knowing in advance whether or not these people are going to have suicidal tendencies or violent tendencies, to hurt others, murderous rage to hurt others, based after they take them. But what we're realizing is that there is a way to determine that, but they don't choose to do that, which is basically just this really cheap test that they can find where these people are in this enzyme deficiency, whether or not they have the ability to process it or not. And you can see where they are on the spectrum. And so that's been covered up. the fact that you can actually figure that out. You can actually figure out who's going to become suicidal and who's going to become, a maniac on these drugs. There is a way, So to do that, and that's what Eileen has done some research on, and she's. We're also going to be talking to the doctor who blew the whistle on this, who made this discovery, and then blew the whistle on it in another episode. Not this one. This one's we're going to be talking to Eileen, because that's where we first came to understand it and learn about it, was through Eileen Danneman, and we'd had her on the show before. We wanted to talk to her anyway about the other things that we had mentioned before, the transcendental mutation and her organization, Vaccine Liberation Army, which is really cool. I recommend anybody go there and check it out. They have great articles, and they've done something that the Vaccine Liberation Army, Eileen has done something that a lot of people in the truth movement or in the anti-vaccine movement, the truth movement about the pharmaceutical industry and vaccines and so forth, hasn't really tried to do, which is they went out there and they recruited young people, students.
Yeah.
And that's very cool. So I want to get her to talk about that a little too, because they went out and looked at, letting young people in on this. They're the ones out there getting stabbed. So Eileen, her organization is the Vaccine Liberation Army. She's gone out of her way to talk to young people, which I think is really interesting, and because a lot of these things that are happening to they're happening to children. They're happening to young. They're the ones that are getting most of the vaccines. They are getting a large number of the pharmaceutical drugs, and they have no say. It's their parents, or it's their, and some of these kids are old enough in their teens and such, the kids that are getting Gardasil, or they're getting their yearly flu shot, or, now they're coming out with these, you need your booster to go into 6th grade and all this nonsense. And so, and they're the ones that are being put on this stuff because they're not behaving in class, or they're not sitting well, or whatever it is that they're diagnosed with, whatever the DSM labeled them as. And they're, So Eileen, she went out to try and let these kids know what was going on to them and get them involved. And I think a lot of the kids, once they realize it, they're more open-minded than adults are, because they get it. They're like, oh, you're right. I didn't like that crap. That stuff made me sick. Or I did take that, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, totally.
But no one believed me, because people don't listen to children.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's in your head, or suck it up,
Yeah. So Eileen she organized the Vaccine Liberation Army, and you can go to her website, vaccineliberationarmy.com, and look at the work that she's doing there, the articles that she's posting and stuff like that. And it's really cool, because I do appreciate that she went out to the people who this is being done to. I think that was really smart of her to do, and to recognize that they would be open to understanding it, because it's it's their lives and they don't have any control. So very cool. So we are going to take a short break, and when we get back, we are going to be talking to Miss Eileen Danneman of the Vaccine Liberation Army. You can please stay with us. Please stay with us, because we will be right back.
I was on holiday with Sir Lawrence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear. We had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertees.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertees.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertees.com. shop.shop.truthitees.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
Welcome back to Truth or Talk. On today's show, we're talking with Eileen Danneman. She is the founder of the National Coalition of Organized Women and the Men Who Love Us. The National Coalition of Organized Women is simply individuals spending their own time and money as individuals speaking up for progressive change and a new vision for America and the world. The National Coalition of Organized Women is considered the grandmother of many of the anti-GMO coalitions. Ms. Danneman is also the founder of the Vaccine Liberation Army, which can be found at vaccineliberationarmy.com. The Student Vaccine Liberation Army's mission statement is armed with knowledge. We are committed to articulate, propagate, promulgate, disseminate, and circulate information for the purpose of encouraging critical thinking, conversations about the risks and dangers of vaccines, the risks of prescription drugs, the philosophy of sovereignty, of personhood and liberation through mental clarity and spiritual and physical health, all in such a way that such activities do not disrupt school operations or interfere with the rights of others. Please welcome to the show Eileen Danneman. Hi, Eileen.
Hi. If I hadn't written that myself, I would have said that's a mouthful.
It was. but it's a good statement. We talk about vaccines a lot. As we were talking before the show, I have a vaccine-damaged son, so it's something that is near and dear to our hearts, as well as Virstyne. She has a vaccine-damaged cousin, so we both experienced it firsthand. So it's good to have you on the show. It's an important issue, obviously, very, very important.
Hey, Eileen, it just shows that you're very clear on what you're trying to accomplish, and I think it's good to have,
Thank you. It was that moment there.
Yeah, so one thing that we did not mention in your intro, but is something that we've read about you, is that you you've been practicing transcendental meditation for several years, and so can you talk a little bit about that to our audience before we jump into the other stuff, and just sort of what are the health benefits and what is it?
Sure. Well, I've been practicing transcendental meditation for 40 years. It was introduced to me by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. A lot of people remember that he was the guru that the Beatles went to see in India. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I first learned TM. I was married, and I was going on a commercial shoot. My husband was a music producer, and we were going on a commercial. And this older gentleman, about 80 years old, he sat next to me, and he was one of the people in the commercial. And he started talking about TM, and he said, I get up in the morning and I walk my dog, and then I come back and I meditate, and then 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the night, then I have my cereal, and then I call my agent, and it sounds so good. Anyway, so I went to get a free introductory lecture, which is all around the country, and it made a lot of sense, and so I learned, and I realized when I got initiated that I just kind of transcended to the bottom of the barrel. Like people who have dreams sometimes, and they're falling out of airplanes or from high places. They never usually hit ground. I actually hit ground, and I was just totally awake. And so I've been practicing for 20 years, 20 minutes morning, 20 minutes in the evening. And what it does is TM, Transcendental Meditation, is actually the first and foremost prong of Ayurvedic medicine. Mm. Yeah, they don't realize that the primary foundational foundation of medicine is transcending, because basically the concept is that source. That means which we all, there's this one point where we all come from. If you want to talk about God or nature, it's like unbounded, omniscient, omnipresent. There's no beginning, no end to G-O-D. It can't even be articulated because you can't limit the concept of infinity, God, totality, all, with even language. So it's usually referred to as, which has no name, because you can't limit it. So therefore, the idea is that we are not outside of that omniscience. So therefore, kind of like if the source is the unified field, the ground of which we all emerge from and all turn to. So when you meditate, you actually are kind of like dissolving into that primordial state from whence you came. And so when you do that, your systems, basically have a minutes of rest. That's why it's reversing the aging process as well, because you rest in that source, and it gives the body time to rest, and therefore you don't age as quickly, and which is always very nice. I started when I was 27, and I always recommend starting early. At that, you want to maintain what you look like from that point of view, rather than starting at 70. But so anyway, so 20 minutes morning, 20 minutes in the evening, and then I initiated my children when they were like 4 or 5 years old, and that was very nice too, because I could go into my bedroom with my husband and tell the kids, like, now don't go into this room because we're meditating, and they really respected that. But they have no sense of time. So we were able to meditate and then even make love, because the kids they weren't bothering us. So that was extra benefit. So yeah, I think that the TM saved my life actually, because I'm a pretty A-type personality. And David Lynch, he has the David Lynch Foundation. So they're teaching kids in schools to meditate, and now I have a video on my website with Jim Carrey and with Russell Brand. It was fabulous. So there's a lot of people. I mean, I think Russell Brand is like super intelligent, and so of course is Jim Carrey. Anyway, so it's I think that if I had a choice, now I had a good life, I had the kids, I had a good husband, a musician, wealth and everything else. I would have to say that if I had a choice that I could only pick one, I would learn to meditate.
Wow.
How important.
I looked into it, and it seems like it's really expensive.
It is.
Why is that? Or can you get a book and learn to do it yourself? Because it was like when I looked into it, they were charging $1,500, and is it worth it? Or can you learn? Is there a cheaper way?
Well, when I did it, it was like $75 when Maharishi came to the West. So I didn't have that particular problem. But it's really interesting today. If I didn't know what it does, and it costs $1,500, which, by the way, I think you can negotiate some kind of, help with that. You have to kind of ask, But if I didn't know what this did, and it was going to be $1,500, I would have the same reaction as you. But knowing that I know what I know, which I would only know if I had been done this, it's worth it. And the reason Maharishi even charged anything at the beginning was because people would get initiated, and then they would just disregard it. They didn't value it. A lot of people don't value something unless they pay for it. For instance, my parents, who came from the Bronx. I mean, there's no way that my parents would meditate. Okay, so Maharishi had said one time, just get your parents to meditate, do whatever you can, whatever. So what I did was I paid for it. I think that time it was like $300 each, $600, and I told my parents that I wasn't getting a refund if they didn't do it. I mean, I pay for it; they have to do it, and so they actually went to do it. And my father meditated till he died, like at 85 years old. But it saved my life. It saved David Lynch, who is a very eccentric type of producer. I believe totally saved his life because he was a little on the weird side as far as his movies are concerned. So yeah, but I think you can negotiate a little bit, like if you're going to school or some kind of hardship or whatever. But it's worth it. I know it's a lot of money, but
yeah. I've heard. I was looking at a video where Howard Stern and of all people, and Jerry Seinfeld were talking about it too. They were really they were really talking about how beneficial it was and how it's helped them. Could it be though? I mean, I think that everything has a good side and a bad side, and I'm just curious. Does transcendental meditation have a dark side, or can it be used to manipulate people into doing dark things, or is it something that?
No, not at all. It's basically I happen to be personally a very spiritual person, and I was brought up Catholic, and I've had experiences of being with Jesus on this planet, and so I know at the beginning, I had gone to India at one point because I just had to know the connection between transcendental meditation and Jesus, and so I actually went to India to find out and to see how that pulled together, and I am quite satisfied. As a matter of fact, I kind of always felt that I'm a warrior type of person, and that I was lent to Maharishi, because I don't look at Maharishi as my guru. I don't look at him as my master. I look at Jesus as my master. So the thing is that there's no dark side, because what you're doing is you're transcending to source, and it's not outside yourself. So any dark side is your own mind creating.
And one more question on transcendental meditation. Because of your experience with pharmaceutical drugs and vaccines, and then also with your experience with transcendental meditation, do you see a connection between drugs and the spirit realm?
It's interesting about drugs. I mean, something like ayahuasca, for instance. My daughter did ayahuasca, and she felt she got a lot of benefit out of it, and I've often considered it. But the thing with TM is that it's when you meditate, it's not like a Kundalini practice where you decide from your level of consciousness, which may be neither here nor there. But here you have a certain level of consciousness, and you're seeking to evolve. And so you go to, let's say, a Kundalini person or whatever, and you learn to put your attention on your spine or on your heart center or whatever like that. The difference between that and TM is that when you meditate, it goes to where it needs to go, I mean, it's a sequential unfolding, so there's no intellect involved, let me concentrate on my, lower chakra or anything. It's actually just simple, like eating ice cream. You just introduce the mantra, transcend. A lot of people fall asleep for a while, for a few months, for a year, because their stress is so enormous. But Maharishi says, sleep. That's what you need to do, is sleep. Regarding learning it, like learning a meditation technique from a yoga club or whatever, the reality is that the TM has a history. It goes back from master to master to master to master. And Maharishi taught these teachers directly himself. And so you actually get more than just learning a mantra. You actually get an empowerment, a frequency empowerment. I mean, you're connected to, it's like Pablo Casals, for instance. If you wanted to learn the cello, you could you could pick up the cello and try to start learning it yourself. You could take a cello and you can learn it in a high school band. You can go to an ordinary teacher and learn the cello. But if you have the opportunity and the inclination and happen to bump into Pablo Casals, you learn the cello with Pablo Casals.
So it's a form of, what do they call that? Is it kind of like remote viewing? Not remote viewing. Maybe maybe it is remote viewing. Or lucid dreaming? Is it kind of?
Not any of that kind of psychic stuff. It's simple. You probably have, you've transcended normally in your own lifetime. You just don't recognize it, because if you got introduced to TM, if you went to this free lecture, you kind of get the experience. But when you feel in your heart, like, quote unquote, mother is at home, when you have that moment in your life where everything is peaceful and wonderful and everything's chill, just that moment, that's when you're aligned with source, when you're, and so it's not a psychic or It's not any of that kind of anything like that.
Okay.
It's Ayurvedic medicine. It's like it's been around forever.
I'm super curious now. I want to try it. I've been active and super curious. I wrote a bunch of questions on this because this is something I'm interested in.
Well, you know, go to the free introductory lecture, you know, and then you'll get another level of understanding.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, sounds good. I want to check that out, too.
Yeah.
So, Eileen, how did you start the National Coalition of Women, and what was your motive to do that?
Okay, so let's see. I was, how did I do that? National Coalition of Organized Women. It was kind of like, I was working with Dennis Kucinich, who was running for president at the time, and I didn't know anything about websites or anything, but there was one guy there in New Mexico who was working with Dennis, and we started talking about websites and things like that. But anyway, after my experience with Dennis Kucinich, I realized that nonprofit organizations could not support a presidential candidate. Nonprofits can't get into politics. So let's say you have someone who really supports your concepts, but you can't do anything to recommend them. So every time I would call a nonprofit who you know are the good guys, you know, this nonprofit, that nonprofit, they could not endorse Dennis Kucinich. So I decided to start my own organization. And the other thing was like the National Organization of Women, which was popular back then, were very, once again, they had their agenda. So for instance, in my organization, as it were, it's actually a virtual organization. It doesn't even really exist. It basically is a quantum field organization. In other words, let's say somebody comes to me and says, I'm into midwifery, you know, I've got this thing going on, and then I'll connect them to like anybody else who's in the midwifery thing. I don't have an agenda. We don't have an agenda like this is the only thing we're doing. It's a matter of frequency. It's a matter of vibration. If somebody comes with passion, chemtrails, you know, sovereignty issues, whatever, if they come with passion, you either are an organized woman or the man who loves, or you're not. So there have been people who came who are kind of like, oh, they want to join because it sounds like it's a good organization to join or whatever, or it's a feminist organization. It's neither this nor that. If you're not a passionate activist kind of person, you wouldn't be in our network. So there's no membership. It's like it just exists because of frequency. The people are attracted to the same frequency. So it's quite powerful, you know, actually.
And so did this lead you to the Vaccine Liberation Army? And so that's how you started that? Was that the transition into that?
Yes. What happened was I was doing National Coalition of Organized Women, but I didn't have a website. I had a small website called Progressive Convergence that this guy, Dennis Kucinich's guy, started for me. And I started, so what happened was I was doing the depleted uranium in Iraq, that the United States was like throwing all this depleted uranium around. And so I like to do a little art with my stuff. So I did these big postcards that had pictures of these children that were born defective and all that kind of stuff. It was a great postcard. And I made $35,000, and I started distributing around Washington, D.C. and all. And on my way to Washington, I get a call from a gal in Chicago who says that Dr. Dan Burton, Congressman Dan Burton, was giving a press conference with the moms from Mercury, that I should go and to the press conference. And, you know, I was exhausted because I was, like, huffing this stuff by train, you know, all these postcards. And so I went, and that's how I found out that they were giving children 15 out of the 39 vaccines from 1980. Children were getting 15 vaccines with mercury. And I thought to myself, that's crazy. I mean, my kids, too. I mean, my first child, my second one, they didn't have as many, but because they were born before 1980. But I thought, this is crazy. How could you inject a person with mercury, you know? Yeah. Especially 15 by the time you're 6 years old. Anyway, I thought, oh, this is a piece of cake. I could continue doing like the Iraq depleted uranium, and with my left hand I could like stop this.
Right.
Because that's insanity, you know.
Right.
But anyway, here we are. The 15 mercury vaccines are gone, but that's an interesting story, by the way, of how that got gone. But that's gone. But meanwhile, the CDC continues to press on vaccinating people, and it's the establishment. I don't really talk to the establishment. I just do it by grassroots. You know, we have these stickers, a roll of 250 stickers. And how we created the Vaccine Liberation Army was these young people, this guy called Robert Wannick. He was a 16-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 16-year-old.
Yes, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so I read about him, and I thought, wow, here's one kid. All we need is one kid per high school. So I investigated him, and we spoke, and it was like amazing, because what he did was he went into a school, and he wrote up his own risk statement, pasted it in the bathroom walls, went into a science class where they were pretended to get a vaccine, that he was going to get a vaccine, went into a science class where all these kids were lined up, started handing out his information, and the kids started, leaving the line, chaos and all, and the principal and the science teacher grabbed him by the throat and pulled him out of the classroom and all, and he sued them eventually. But anyway, so I said, wow, that's all we need is one person per school. So then he says, stickers. He says, everybody's been collecting stickers since they're 4 years old. And so rather than hand a brochure to a kid, I mean, a kid doesn't want a brochure. So we created the Vaccine Liberation Army, the Student Vaccine Liberation Army, and another kid from Canada who happened to be ADHD, and he didn't work out because he was a little bit off kilter there. But anyway, so he did this David Dees. I don't know if you know who he is. David Dees is the Goya of art. He does all those GMO and So he designed our logo for us. So what happened was when I went to him to design the stickers, he just did a vaccine hypodermic needle with the red with the X on it, and so I showed it to this one young kid, and he said, "Hey, where's the skull?" So I went back to David Dees and I said, "Where's the skull?" And so then he developed this amazing stickers, of which when you go to a high school or a college or a middle school, you have this roll of fabulous stickers. They're about 3 inches, and you roll them out, and you say to the kid, "Hey, you want a sticker?" Well, it's like a bird frenzy. I mean, they don't want one sticker; they want 10 stickers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you try to give them a brochure, they'd walk away from you.
Right.
The
cool.
stickers are, that's actually good.
That really is cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I heard you say that you went to the Autism One conference and they kind of thought it was a little too much, or they didn't like the name or the sticker. What was it?
Yeah, that was trippy. So the gal who runs that, obviously does a good job. Terry somebody, Aranka or something like that. And prior to, just as I was starting it, there was Louise Habakis, anyway, a very intelligent gal who wrote one of the books, very good book on vaccines and all. Anyway, she was starting her parent rights organization, and so she was the first one to say, that, couldn't I make it be absorbed into her, kind of thing, which kind of looks like, the YMCA, feeling, whereas we're more of an army, and they really rejected the idea of the army, like it was too aggressive. So I said, "Wow, are you kidding?" I said, "Look what's happening to our kids. The whole, all of humanity is being disabled. We need an army. This is an army of kids. And so they wanted me to." For me to come to the conference with my kids, they wanted me to change the logo. So at that point I thought, it's like kind of like sending your baby back. So I basically pulled out of any kind of need that I thought I had to have some kind of consensus. And from that point on, I decided that consensus wasn't happening for me. And so I don't do consensus. And so I pulled it back, created it, went to the conference, and the rest is history, because I think that the Vaccine Liberation Army is quite popular, actually, because what happens is that when the kids get the stickers, the parents look at the sticker and they want to know what's going on, so that even the parents get to look at the website.
Right. Yeah. It's a really brilliant way to get people involved. Gave me some ideas, too, from listening to you talk.
Right. Yeah, because she's a teacher, so that would be good for her students.
Yeah.
So, Eileen, I read about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Listening. I got my information from these kids. They're the generation that's being harmed, and so I just followed their leads. That's all. I had enough confidence in my own intuition and confidence in Robert Warnick and everybody else to just move in that direction and not listen to others.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a young friend. She's 21 now, but she was vaccine damaged when she was 14 or 13 by the 13 by the Gardasil vaccine, and she's still disabled. She's still unable to walk, and she's severely autoimmune issues like my son. But she's older, so she can speak about it. She didn't lose her cognition. She's still very intelligent. So it's it's their deal. They're the ones that are being jabbed, and taking their childhood and their lives away from them, or their potential anyway, And so it's really a good idea to address them and to have them do the fighting, because they're the ones that, and they would seem to me a lot of times would be more open as well, because, a lot of adults get kind of set in their ways, and so they're hard to talk to when it comes to vaccines. I'm sure you've experienced that. People just put up a wall, and they just don't even want to even acknowledge that there's a possibility it could hurt anybody.
Because they're religious freaks about it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They become like religious zealots when it comes to these things, and they won't even condescend to it, even when you explain to them, well, there's all this mercury. And they just go, well, but
it saves lives. It cures cancer.
Right. It's just bizarre.
It's so God, basically.
Yeah, it's their God. Yes, it is. And doctors are the same. Now that's interesting. Now here we have. I followed the pregnant women during the 2009 pandemic, which didn't turn out to be a pandemic. Remember the H1N1 pandemic? Anyway, so young women started to put blogs on the internet about having miscarriages. So God knows how I picked that up, but I started picking that up, and I worked with a couple of very wonderful scientists, vaccine specialists, and one computer scientist who's published a lot in many review journals. And it turns out that and this is how you cannot trust the CDC. It turns out that they gave pregnant women double doses. They gave them the seasonal flu shot and the untested H1N1 flu shot, both of which had 25 mcgs of mercury. So they double dosed these women at 6 weeks pregnant, whatever, and there was a 4,250% spike in abortions and miscarriages and stillbirths. And so I tracked it all the way to the end, and the stuff that they did, the CDC actually put out a study saying, with this guy, Dr. Pedro Morro, into the OBGYN's most read peer-reviewed journal, the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Here I'm tracking them. They know that I've got them. They put a study now the year after, so that's the fall of 2010. So they've just double dosed the women with in 2009. and we're talking about the 2009/2010 season. It's now the fall of 2010, and this study comes out in the journal because all the doctors were wondering how it went, how it would go. We all vaccinated our women, pregnant women twice. So this article said that the vaccine is safe for pregnant women. They did the study, this Pedro Mar did a study from 1991 to 2009. And so, of course, everybody thought, well, 2009, that's the pandemic H1N1, 2009. Now, this is in 2010, the fall of 2010 that he did this. All the information was in already from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. It turns out that he stopped in the 2008/2009 season, even though he knew that the 2009/2010 season, there was a 4,250% increase, but he misled everybody. The CDC purposely misled the gynecologists by doing this from 1991 to 2009, like 20 years, there was only 1.2 abortions per year, right? And he purposely stopped short of the H1N1 season, of which then they did this whole big publicity thing. The flu shot is safe for pregnant women all over the world. Now, that's pretty diabolical. On top of that, 10 nonprofits, including the March of Dimes and the AMA and everything else, they were urged by the CDC to write a joint letter to send to every OBGYN. I mean, they were really targeting every OBGYN to say that they could have said, by the way, there was a 4,250% increase in miscarriages, but they didn't. They said continue to give the pregnant women one shot. Okay, they didn't say, by the way, I know you were giving them 2 shots. Give them 1 shot, which was going to have the H1N1 and the seasonal flu in the 1 shot. So they totally did a big campaign to obfuscate, our results, which they did acknowledge eventually that our results were absolutely true. But yet they covered it up, and they now, on top of that, with that, they not only covered it up, but now pregnant women are asked to get 4 vaccines.
Yeah.
Now that's crazy that they could cover it up like that. They could target the OBGYN so they don't know anything. The OBGYNs could read the journal and think that 2009 was, of course, the pandemic year, and so because they don't read all the things, they just read the title and the conclusion. And they purposely covered it all up. And something, there's nobody we could sue. You can't even take it to the federal government, to the HHS. There's nothing to do about it. And the only thing you can do about it is grassroots.
And the CDC, they're real good about playing the numbers game and just kind of hiding the number. It seems like, didn't they also, with the pregnant women thing, omit the number of stillbirths from? They said, this is how many miscarries there were, but then they omitted how many stillbirths there were, so they actually showed that there were even more if you put that all together. Isn't that one of the things you guys found as well?
Well, we included stillbirths, but no, they actually at the end, after we went down to Atlanta, Georgia, where the CDC is, and after we went, what happened was we sent somebody down, Dr. Renee Taco, Mary Taco's daughter. She has some autism websites. She went down to Atlanta, Georgia for us, and a Dr. Shimbakuro from the CDC was giving a presentation on the 2009-10 flu season, how it went with Guillain-Barré, how it went with this and that. And he said nothing about pregnancy. So she stands up and she says, well, what about the pregnant women? How'd that go, basically? He went into his suitcase and brought up the slides about pregnant women. He had it all the time, but he wasn't going to show the slides. So they showed the slides, and it was basically pretty accurate. There's some missing, but it shows a very high, 4,000% increase. It was a little short, maybe because of the stillbirths, but it was pretty phenomenal. But they were hiding it so that but anyway, there's nothing to do about it except to warn pregnant women.
And so what I've been reading on your sites lately is that you came across this this enzyme deficiency thing and how this kind of connects to the vaccine and the pharmaceutical industries as well, the CYP450. So how did you learn about that? And if you can explain to our audience what that is.
Well, this is a trip. So what happened was I'm figuring, actually, as I'm investigating it, that the more spiritual, organic-oriented people have, like, the most problem with this. See, what happens is that cytochrome, there's a field that's been in business for 15 years called pharmacogenetics. And what they do is they research the interaction between the modern drugs. We got Prozac, Zyprexa, Haldol, Resperdal, all the Adderalls and all. And so their research is to show the connection between the drugs and our detox mechanism in our body. So it turns out that the cytochrome P450, 2D6, is one channel. There's a cytochrome P450, which is the basic gene, and then there's different channels. There's 2D6, and there's 3,4A, or 3A4. They give numbers to this thing. So it's very interesting that people can't quite comprehend what's going on because of all these like numbers, and strange names. But anyway, the bottom line, layman talk, is that we all have the cytochrome P450, and on the cytochrome P450, I noticed was also glutathione. Now, glutathione is one of those things that all these autistic children and injured children are having a problem with glutathione. Glutathione is also a detox mechanism, and cytochrome P450 is the detox gene, and so it's sitting actually on the gene. So it turns out that this cytochrome P450 2D6 is actually missing, basically dormant, in 10% of the Caucasian population, for example. So in other words, if those that are missing the cytochrome activity, which is basically, like organic spiritual people who've married each other and they arrive in this toxic soup of modern drugs and everything, and they've had a dormant cytochrome because there's been no necessity, because we were an organic country before like 1938. It was basically all organic. Now all of a sudden these people are, they don't need the cytochrome. For instance, the Tanzanian Africans and the Ethiopian Africans, they don't have very good soil, so they've been eating weeds for all these generations. And so those who lived through eating weeds, which is basically medicines, they actually multiplied their cytochrome P450-2D6, so that actually you could give, they're called ultrametabolizers. You could give a Ethiopian and a Tanzanian African a drug, and they will immediately throw it out. It's called ultrametabolism. But meanwhile, the 10% Caucasians, and I'm thinking Adam Lancer, the Batman James Holmes, Jared Loughner, all the school shootings are done by young men younger than 26 years old, who are taking psych drugs. And so what happens if you're missing your cytochrome and you take a psych drug or a street drug? Not particularly marijuana, because marijuana actually is not 2D6, it's actually 3A4, so it's a little different. But these pharmaceuticals. So these kids have been vaccinated, and then they're told to be mentally ill, not the autism, but the ADHD, ADD, bipolar, schizophrenic, and they're given these modern drugs. So meanwhile, the reason they're mentally ill is because the vaccines have damaged them. So it turns out that my hypothesis is that when you're giving vaccines, now it's 54 vaccines by the time you're 6 years old, okay, you have to detoxify that. But it turns out that cytochrome P450 is maturing, so it's not really active in some people. It's not only non-existent, basically, dormant in 10% of the Caucasian population, but it's actually not maturing in the rest of the population. So you wonder why somebody's like really all the way autistic, or someone's just got ADHD, whatever, it's because their cytochrome is not functioning. Like mercury, for instance, interferes in the cytochrome mechanism. So I'm pretty sure that the cytochrome P450, which is now getting a lot of some traction, that I would like to do a test for those autistic kids who are fully autistic to see what their status of their cytochrome P450 is. So meanwhile, how it really happened for me was that my son, I have 2 sons and a daughter. My first son is my second child. So it affects boys more than girls, it seems like, this autism. Mm-hmm. And so it has something to do with testosterone, whatever, with a boy's mechanism. Anyway, I vaccinated my first son, but it was born before 1980, so he's a little bit emotionally tweaked, but not bad. Anyway, my last son, who's 29 years old, would have been fully and he was born in 1984. He would have had the complete complex of the vaccines, including those 15 mercury shots. I did not vaccinate him, thank God. But anyway, what happened to him was he went to school at 21 years old. He was actually meditating since he's 2. Went to school in Iowa, University of Iowa, and actually did a LSD trip. And he went bonkers for weeks. And then they grabbed him into the psych ward. And they said, well, if he was just LSD, he would be over it in like a couple of days. And so they knew nothing about cytochrome P450. I didn't either. So I said, well, why don't you just detoxify him? Obviously the LSD did this. And they refused. They said, we don't detoxify. So they started giving him Haldol and Ativan and all that kind of stuff. And so I spent years pulling my son in and out of psych wards. And finally, this gal in our network, Dr. Yolanda Lucier, if you put in my search engine, if you put psychotic, you'll come up with this particular link. But anyway, Dr. Lucier is a psychiatrist in Australia. So she writes to me because I reached out to my network about my son. She tells me about cytochrome P450. So I go and do the test, and so for like $200, we're able to do tests for people, in Australia. And so my son is an absolute non-metabolizer. So they were making him psychotic. He finally threw him out of college. I mean, it was a whole terrible years and years and years of the hospitals, giving these kids these psych drugs and making them more and more psychotic. And then they give them more and more psych drugs. So it's all connected to the vaccines, calling you mentally ill, and then giving you these medications, and they're all counterindicated.
Wow. And so getting this test for people like my son, who I said was vaccine damaged, because I don't give him obviously any vaccines or pharmaceuticals anymore because I could see that it did the damage. So, I don't see it being very logical as to like going back to the people who caused the problem looking for a solution, But anyway, so I ignore them now. But as we're seeing kind of the police state getting into this medical thing, trying to force people into taking medications and things, it would be a good idea if you suspect your child or yourself to have this problem to just test for it, because then you have sort of a medical exemption on hand.
Yeah, but they're trying to do that. University of Illinois, this is really just now, after 15 years, the University of Illinois is actually requiring the cytochrome test before you give drugs to people. And you realize not only psychiatrists are giving these drugs, but pediatricians are giving these drugs. 10,000 toddlers are on psych drugs. 10,000 toddlers. And so
insanity.
Yeah, so it's not only psychiatrists, but everybody else who knows nothing about psych drugs are giving everybody psych drugs. So this is how stupid doctors are. Excuse me, doctors, but this is how stupid they are. That the University of Illinois knows they're stupid. They know nothing about pharmacogenetics. They refuse to take any kind of continuing education about it. And so what they do is they're insisting now to have a protocol to do the test, but they're so uninformed that they're actually going to give a red light, green light, or yellow light. So when they get the test back, the doctors don't even know about anything because it's, they actually say red light means don't give them the drugs. Yellow light means be cautious. And the green light means go ahead, give them drugs. They have to give a color code, for heaven's sakes.
Wow. But wouldn't you, let's say if you have a yellow light, and wouldn't there be an accumulative effect? Because when you're taking these things, because if you're not metabolizing them, where are they going? They're just kind of staying in your body, right?
Exactly.
And so the non-responder, like your son and probably mine, would have an immediate reaction. We're going to see them just go nuts when they're on, because anytime he's even vitamin supplements, sometimes he's extremely sensitive. And I go, wow, but it's, I'm giving a vitamin supplement. But if there's anything synthetic, he just will start to become very hyperactive, and his self-stimulatory behavior goes up, and it freaks me out. I don't know, because it's really hard to find things that are helpful to him because of that, because he is so incredibly sensitive. And so I would assume that, he's probably one of these non-responders, but they have immediate reactions, so it's almost a better thing to be able to have an immediate reaction, because then it's like you're the kind of person that you're the first to smell fire when the building goes up, but then the other people who would smell it slowly would be like you're describing these shooters who, they seem fine for a while, and then all of a sudden they just go berserk.
Right, because they've accumulated it. Because there's the ultra metabolizer, there's the poor metabolizer, and there's a non-metabolizer. My family are non-metabolizers. So what I did with my son was I put him in Narcanon, which which is a Scientology related fabulous detox place in California, where they put him in a sauna 4 hours a day. So for those who are non-metabolizers, they have to run and sweat and somehow get it out, because they haven't got the cytochrome to get it out.
Right, exactly. But yeah, there's people you were talking about the shooters, and I remember years ago reading about there was the Columbine cover-up that they had actually known that those boys were on anti-psychotics or antidepressants. One of the boys was on, and one of the victims' families had actually filed lawsuit against the pharmaceutical company. But nobody knows about it, but that's what happened. He actually filed lawsuit because they were able to prove that they knew that this drug actually caused suicidal and violent behavior.
Right.
And then one of the papers when I was researching this, when I came across this, or someone brought it to my attention, I was researching it, and I found a paper that said that I want to say it was Prozac. There were a couple of drugs that they had looked at, and these SSRIs, they actually, even a person who might be might be a metabolizer, they actually cause you to reduce your ability to metabolize it. So it's counterproductive. It's like there's no way to actually metabolize these things, because even if you do have the cytochrome, it's the drug itself is causing you to not produce it.
That's called an inhibitor.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and so it's really pretty horrible when you see the whole picture where they give vaccines, and now they're giving 4 vaccines in utero. So they give the vaccines in utero, then they give the vaccines until 6 years old, and then of course you're supposed to get a flu shot every year and all that. And then they give you the psych drugs because you're mentally quote unquote ill. And it's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. That's what I'm saying. It's and it's crazy to think that these guys cause you the problem and they're going to have the solution for you. It's bizarre. That's where I didn't see the logic in that. So I just kind of, once I realized that was what was going on, I just stayed away. But
yeah, well, come on. I just put a post on my website that a 19-year-old girl took the HPV. Now, like you said, your friend, the 21-year-old, did the HPV at 14, and she's crippled. So this study came out that this 19-year-old. The first they do this propaganda. This Gardasil, this HPV is 100%. We found in this country and that country. It's just absolutely 100% effective bullshit, And then they say this 19-year-old girl, an exception, took the 3 doses of the HPV vaccine, and this is pre-sexual debut. She got warts, all over the place. And so then they're talking about, well, it could have something to do with, in her case, an autoimmune problem. Of course, they're giving all these vaccines to all these kids who all have autoimmune problems.
Right.
And so in her case, then partway down in the study, they say they're going to recommend giving her another 3 HPV vaccines.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It's completely insane. It's bonkers. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I just wanted to ask a little bit, Eileen, because of all the research that you've done and you're continuing to do on vaccines, and I noticed as part of a fear-mongering tactic to get the population vaccinated, since a very early age, I've been bombarded with images of, children laden with smallpox from head to toe and iron lungs, and then, through the years I've seen movies showing the extinction of the human race from diseases such as like Outbreak or The Stand or World War Z. Since we're so different and have different strengths and weaknesses, is it really possible that a global pandemic would occur that would kill most of the population, or is it exaggerated? Is it another fear tactic?
No, I think that if you've ever heard of Dr. Rudolf Steiner, he was the founder of biodynamic agriculture. He was a Christian mystic in the 1918s. He also created the Waldorf system, the education system. Anyway, he said there'd come a time when there would be a technology, and we're thinking, genetic engineering, technology that would be very bad, and during the same time there would be a sexual disease coming through the blood system that would actually preclude the ability to think spiritually. And at that time, like safe islands would emerge. That would be communities based around biodynamic agriculture, organic agriculture. What's happened is that one of our other things for the Student Vaccine Liberation Army is genetic engineering. Basically, I don't know how it happened, but the National Coalition of Organized Women kind of blew the whistle on genetic engineering in the early day, and we turned Jeffrey Smith on to it, and we were like the grandmother of many of the anti-GMOs. So when it comes to like this apparent end times and this apparent mass extinction, I think that it's definitely possible. I think that what we do to the earth, the plants, we're doing to ourselves. Turns out that Roundup, Monsanto's genetic engineering seeds and their Roundup, their glyphosate, has something to do with cytochrome P450. So plants have cytochrome P450 too. So they do some kind of technology where they do something with the cytochrome P450 so that everything dies except for Monsanto's special genetically engineered seeds. So I think that there will be an agricultural holocaust at some time. I think that if there's an agricultural holocaust, because right now what's happening, I don't know if you've heard about WikiLeaks, Julian Assange releasing some documents about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all this kind of stuff. So we're like shipping genetic engineering like all over the world now. The United States is going to become the actual, like Iowa, for instance, where I also spent some time. Iowa has been slated as the hog and grain feed capital of world economy. So it's actually becoming like just pigs on X-lax. These new trade agreements are sending GMO all over the world. Now, why is this an interesting thing? Is that there's going to be a reset of the currency, and so the reset of the currency. And WikiLeaks just released the new financial agreements with like 50 countries, but not Russia and China, where they're going to reset all the currencies, and it's going to be based on resources. So the United States, since the 1970s, has gone out to genetic engineer our multinationals, genetically engineer the food supply so that the United States currency, the United States resource is food supply. So when Julian Assange let go of the international properties segment of his release, it's just that Monsanto wants to change all the international property patents so that they own the world food supply. So as far as what we do for plants and we do for animals and for people, when the agricultural basis goes and you're eating poison food, and it turns out that this poison food, because it's being put with Roundup on it, it's got this glyphosate on it, so not only, and that interferes in cytochrome P450. So not only are we giving the vaccines, and we're giving the mercury, and we're giving the site drugs, but now the food contains this inhibitor of cytochrome P450 as well. So imagine that this, mass extinction is definitely possible because it's going to be on the agricultural level, as well as the people who are eating the food. I eat organic.
Right.
Well, I guess what I was just talking about when you see in movies, it's just like with the way they portray it, there's a virus, a wild virus that gets loose. Somebody gets it and then, contaminates it to the rest, or contaminates the rest of the population just by carrying the disease. So are you saying that there have to be other factors involved other than that would
well, obviously, if you're shifting the agriculture and you're shifting, the human beings, that, like, for instance, in the agriculture, putting this glyphosate into the ground and the genetic engineering, I mean, as a woman, that if you were implanted with alien life forms, which is GMO seeds are, you would eventually have an abortion. But, a spontaneous abortion. So the thing is with the viruses and the bacteria, they're all part of the ecosystem. So yes, it's very possible. I mean, look at AIDS and look at Ebola and everything else. It's definitely possible that the humanity, there will be some humans left, I suppose, but that humanity can be basically extinct. A lot of people might be gone. Yeah, basically, they're either going to have cancer, chronic diseases. I mean, why? If you get vaccinated and you're getting all these drugs and you're getting vaccinated and you have obesity, you have asthma, you have diabetes, you have all these chronic illnesses. Who wants to live anyway? I mean, they're making us. I would rather go to my next journey.
Wow.
People have to get. The idea is, I study esoteric spirituality and everything. People have to get hold of the idea that death is simply a doorway to another subtle realm without the dense physicality of the body. This dense physicality of the body, keeps us in this dimension, and then we have all these diseases and carry on like this. But people are afraid of death. When there'll come a time where death will be as exciting as getting born or getting married. I mean, people have to reconsider what death is. That's a big lie. That death is a terrible thing. I think dying terribly is a little bit tricky, but death itself, I think that basically we need to prepare for, looking at death as a positive thing.
Right.
Cool.
Because none of us are getting out of this thing alive, right? So we're all going to go there at some point. So you might as well just get into it and realize that that's just part of life.
Exactly.
And not be afraid. Yeah. So, Eileen, it's been really great having you on the show. We're just about out of time here, but before you leave us, we want to remind everybody how they can get in touch with you or see what you're doing and check out your work. So can you give us the websites?
Sure. Just www.vaccineliberationarmy.com. And that has it's not just about vaccines, it's about the psych drugs, it's about, all of it, but what's interesting about your last death thing, it's like, everybody gets to do it, no matter if you have courage or not have courage. And that's why transcendental meditation is so important, because when you're established in unity, when your soul is established through your personality, and you're like sitting in the middle of the hub of the wheel while the tire flaps against the pavement, because the tire is going to flap against the pavement. That's what the earth plane is all about. So when you meditate, you're actually at the center of the wheel while it's going on, and that's really a lifesaver.
I'm definitely going to get into that because that sounds really, it sounds like something that we all need. Do you ever think that there's people who just don't, that transcendental meditation is just not for them? There's some people who just can't get into it, or?
Well, you've got born-again Christians, and you've got all sorts of different levels of consciousness, and it's not that they're that's just a stage. Like when a flower grows, it grows and it grows and it grows until it blooms. So everybody is at a different stage of consciousness. Not everybody can achieve, Christness. Jesus achieved, a high level of consciousness. And not everybody's at a different place. So if they don't resonate with it, they don't resonate with it. And I feel very fortunate that I resonate with it.
Well, that's really, really cool. So thanks again for being on the show today. And it's vaccineliberationarmy.com. You can see, read their articles, and we're really glad that you were able to make it on today. So thanks, and please enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, Virstyne and I will close out the show. But we're really grateful to have had Eileen here join us today.
Thank you.
Bye, Eileen. Thank you.
That seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a T-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist T-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truther Talk. We just interviewed Miss Eileen Danneman of the Vaccine Liberation Army, National Coalition of Organized Women, and it was really good, huh?
Yeah, it was wonderful. We were talking earlier in the intro about how she's so brilliant in actually recruiting children. To do that. I think she is the only person that I know that is doing that, or that. Do you know of anybody else? Is she the only one?
Not that I'm aware of. I think that she. I like that sticker story. How she taught the kids or I guess it was Robert Wannick, who we're fans of his. We've watched his stuff. If you go look at Robert Wannick's stuff on YouTube, it's really interesting. This young kid, when he was like 13 or 14 years old, he started questioning the official narrative of 9/11 because they were teaching it to him in school. They were teaching him the official story, and then he said that then they got to the part where they were talking about the conspiracy theorist. And so once they started showing that, he was like, I actually kind of believe that. And so then it was awesome. He just kind of started from there, and he started becoming an activist, and they were trying to suppress him at the school, and they were saying that he was, that he was lying.
And,
they were totally after him, the principal and everybody, and he was, putting stickers on, on the kids' chairs and things like that, and he was getting suspended, and he was getting into all kinds of trouble, and his parents actually were supportive of what he was doing. They believed in him, and they thought that he was doing the right thing, and he got involved with Eileen Danneman because I guess he was also questioning the official narrative on vaccination. And I'd seen some of his videos where he does that. He goes and asks people why they're getting a flu shot. And he's just this kid. He's so adorable.
I think he's like 18 or 19 now. But this is...
Oh, he's in his 20s now, I think.
Okay. Yeah, he's older.
He's not a kid anymore. But in the videos that I saw way back in the day, he was very young. And he was walking up to people and asking them why they were making their decisions to get their flu shots. And originally they had were handing out pamphlets, and then it was his idea kids like stickers. So if you give them stickers, they'll take them. Whether a pamphlet, they'll just throw them away. And So, but you give them stickers, they'll take 20 of them, you know, and they'll like post them everywhere. And so that was a brilliant idea that she had to reach out to the kids, and then of course, you know, who better than Robert Wennick, he's very he's a natural leader. Like he's somebody that people gravitate to, and he's not even trying to be. It's just how he is naturally. He's just very charismatic. People want to see what he's doing, people just follow him because he's, you know.
Well, he's true, right? He's telling the truth. And when people sense that you're being truthful and you're being sincere, then, you know. I mean, granted, there are people that follow people that aren't telling the truth and that aren't sincere, but I think maybe it does just boil down to charisma. Now that I think about it, because you could be, you know, we interviewed Jimmy DeWolf and we were talking about Scientology, and there are a lot of people that followed L. Ron Hubbard, even though he wasn't being sincere and he wasn't being truthful. But so I guess it boils down to charisma, and whoever is charismatic, they can either be, you know, use it to empower people or disempower people. I guess you put it like that,
Yeah, it's true, and you know, yeah, exactly. And he's using it to empower people. He's charismatic, and he speaks the truth, and he's I would say pretty fearless. Like he went in and just started doing this, and a lot of people I think are fearless in their teens. So it's really, you know, because you just don't know any better. You don't know to be everything necessarily.
You think you know everything, but you don't know shit, basically.
Right, exactly. He does know, so he's an old soul like that. He gets it, you know. So I like Robert Wennick. I'm a fan. I hope that we can have him on the show one day because he's a good voice in the movement. And one of my favorite videos that he did was a very old one, and he was probably like 13 or 14 at the time. And he talked about how in school they had laughed at him when he brought up the New World Order.
Oh, yeah.
But then he found in his history book, they actually had a chapter entitled The New World Order. And it talked about NAFTA and GATT and how these things were a part, and the Council on Foreign Relations and how these things were all a part of forming this New World Order. And he shows it to you. He shows it right in his textbook. And you're like, that's hilarious. And they're sitting there telling, what kind of doublespeak are they giving the, you know, or it just shows how they're giving doublespeak to our children. And he's going, but he was smart enough to figure it out and say. But I remember having an experience like that where I had a teacher poke fun at me in the classroom about a political issue and give me a bunch of shit and try and humiliate me. But in the end, I was right and he was wrong. It was my senior year of high school, and I had spoken out against the war at the Persian Gulf. The first time we invaded Iraq, I think, there was another before that, but this was in the early 90s with the Bush. The first time the Bushes invaded Iraq, and for the assault on Kuwait. And, you know, I was an avid, I spoke out against it, and he said, he tried to give me a bunch of crap for it, say that I was out of line and I was unrealistic, and, you know, I didn't know what I was talking about. But then, sure enough, just like, what was it, a few months later, you know, when the same thing was happening to, what was it, the Serbian people, we didn't do anything to help them. So I was like, and then, you know, of course, Kuwait, you know, and he was like, oh. And then he had to kind of retract, but he never gave me credit for pointing out that, you know, it was wrong. But he did retract that he did have to say that he admitted that, you know, there was a hypocrisy, that we had chosen which side to be on only because the Kuwaitis had money and oil. And, you know. Yeah, well,
that's like when I was talking to one of my friends, guns, you know, you're a violent person, you're a bad person. And I was like, well, you know, one of the reasons we have that in our, you know, Constitution is if the government were to, you know, try to take over the population, you know, we would have a means to protect ourselves. And I was trying to get her to relate, so I was like, well, what were to happen, because they have they don't really like China, they have tension, you know, there's tension between China and Taiwan, so I was like, well, what if China were to come over and they wanted to take over Taiwan. And they don't really have much of an army. I think they have an army, but it doesn't really seem like much of an army. And then I'm like, well, if the civilians had, guns, they can protect themselves. But she was like, oh, yeah, well, if that were to happen, then the U.S. would save us. I was like, you got oil? Like, right. There's no way. Like, they only do shit. The government, they only do shit like that if they have their own personal interests.
Exactly.
It's sad, though, that there are people that are that naive. And she wasn't, I would say she's intelligent. She was an intelligent person, but she was incredibly naive. And it's a shame that there are people that think that, as adults, I can see as children, but as adults, that think that, the U.S., the United States is just like this big, they're heroes, They're
right.
heroes, and they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. But they're not, You better believe,
right.
You better believe if they're in somebody else's country, it's because they're getting something out of it,
Yeah, for real.
But it's sad, too, because, I don't want to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
It's sad, too, because that's the myth that they used to get a lot of people to join the Army, and or any of the military, any branches of the military, because, they get a lot of kind-hearted people who want to do good and who do buy in that hero philosophy, that hero image. And, like, what's his name, Pat Tillman, he gave up his football career. That's
right.
Insanely, like, I don't know, like, I want to say, I'm not going to say naive, but I'll just say just incredibly, I would say that is heroic, because from his point of view, he thought he was doing, at the time, he thought he was doing a good thing, and he wanted to help. So him and his brother went over, and he gave him his football career to fight in the war, and then we found out what was going on, because he's a smart guy. He figured out what was going on, and they killed him. So, and I'm talking about they as in the friendly fire, as in his own people basically murdered him.
Yeah.
Because they knew if he came back, people would listen to him. He's a big football star. There's no way, It would cause uproar. And that's sad. I mean, that's really disturbing, but.
That is a sad story. But yeah, we were, how do we get I'm like, how do we get over here? Oh, right, because we were talking about Atlantic, because Eileen Danneman brought him up that she had reached out to him to get involved with the Vaccine Liberation Army, and he did, because he's against, poisoning children, He's a good person. He's against poisoning children. So he's against vaccination, and he started that sticker campaign, which I think was a brilliant idea. They started handing out bumper stickers and stickers to kids to put on cars and walls and everything like that. And this huge campaign to get out the real information about the flu vaccine, because I think that it was at the time when they were pushing that H1N1 crap. Remember that propaganda?
Yeah, I do. That was terrible. The swine flu. Oh, God.
Yeah, that was insane in the membrane. That was just weird. Because it wasn't even that we have the president coming out on national TV and talking about, and urging people to go out and get their swine flu vaccine. It was like something out of a bad science fiction movie about a pandemic science fiction movie, It was super stupid. And wasn't it terrible?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just awful, and I thought this guy was nuts. And I remember, even people telling me, like, that people I knew, family members and stuff that I was close to, they were like, all scared about the swine flu, and, like, my kids had a cold. Oh, well, what if it's a swine flu? And I'm like, so? Then they'll get over it, It's like, fine, they'll be fine.
Turn into a pig. You better.
I was just like, I'm like, do you know what it is? It's really just a flu. I mean, it's like we get the flu you get exposed to it every year. It's like, do they really know? I mean, the flu shot is just, I don't even want to talk about it because it's so stupid. It's like, it doesn't even deserve a full conversation, but it's ineffective, because even if vaccines work, which they don't know what virus is going to be circulating anyway. So it could be a new strand that you're exposed to. So we're exposed to new strands all the time. And so they're going to scare me because it was started by a pig. Like, who cares?
And it's hypocritical because isn't that the same reason that they don't have a vaccine for malaria? Because what I've read is that they haven't created one because there's so many different strains of malaria. It would be impossible to get the right one. Not that I believe that the vaccine works, but I mean I'm just saying, given from their logic, that's what they say. So why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they using that same logic for the flu shot? It's just total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's only when it serves them. When they're just
Precisely. It's only when it serves them, and it makes if they can get somebody to fake it, because obviously they're having all these people. We've seen this in the news. I don't know how many times recently, like two or three times at least that I can think of, where the guy is trying to create a vaccine and then gets found out that he's frauding or he's making shit up, and so then they go, oh well, we have to stop the program, and this guy's going to be sent to jail and stuff like that. But what do you expect to happen? Because how is he going to find, like for instance, the HIV, the guy who was looking for or trying to make an HIV vaccine. Well, they said that this guy was found to be frauding. Well, yeah, because the whole thing is a fraud. It's like the whole virus is a fraud. Of course it's a fraud. What was he going to find? How is he going to find a virus when it doesn't exist? So, of course they don't have an HIV vaccine. They can't even find a virus. So, yeah. It's ridiculous. The only way he could do it is if he frauded, and he tried to make something up, and say something. So then he got found out that he was fraud, and I guess he's going to jail or something. I don't know, but I don't know the outcome of the case, but I know that he was found to be a fraud. And and the same was true with the guy who did the vaccine study in Denmark, saying that autism and vaccines were unrelated, or that vaccines didn't. He unequivocally proved that vaccines didn't cause autism, but then he was turned out to be a fraud and a liar, and and then fled the country with a bunch of money. Like, they found him, and he's gone to jail now. But I mean, he took grant money, and then he fled the country. Why? Because he probably felt the axe was going to fall. He knew that it was going to be, he was going to get caught, that he was a fraud, and that he had lied, and that he manufactured his findings. So it just happens over and over and over again, these guys, and the swine flu was just, that was just a joke. The swine flu, there was a swine flu in the 1970s, and nobody died from the actual flu, but a couple people died from the vaccine that they created. And then they're coming out here telling you, like, take this vaccine. It's insane. So when that whole thing was going on, Eileen, not only was she recruiting the young people to get involved, to try and fight back on it, but she was also, she did a lot of, I would recommend going to her site, and if you're interested, and looking at the reporting that she did on that, because she discovered the link between the swine flu vaccine and on pregnant women, and how they covered up the number of miscarries that were happening. Pregnant women were having miscarriages left and right, spontaneous abortions. Their bodies were spontaneously aborting, and stillbirths. So the baby was being born but dead. So, the CDC was covering that up. And one of the things that her and her people, I think it's just her really that does most of the work, had uncovered was the fact that they had been hiding the numbers of the women that, because it was never approved for pregnant women to this day. None of that shit's been approved for pregnant women, yet they still keep giving it to them like it is. Yeah, it's just crazy. So she was really cool, and I liked also, we didn't, the first time we had her on, we never got into her transcendental meditation practice. So that was really interesting, because I actually didn't really know anything about that. Did you?
I know that I've heard about it. I'm interested. It just seems like it's very expensive, and I think that's why I haven't really looked. I looked into it. It was like But I've heard wonderful things about it, and maybe it is worth the $1,500 right now. I just, I don't know. I mean, it's, I think it's something I will eventually do, or should look into. But I don't know a lot. I mean, I know that David Lynch has talked about it. I've seen other people like Jerry Seinfeld and Howard Stern and Russell Brand and Ellen DeGeneres, you know. And I think meditation itself is very beneficial to me, or has been, or can be beneficial to other people. I don't know what the difference between transcendental meditation is and regular meditation.
Yeah, they say you reach some kind of transcendence, I suppose. Like, but
the people that talked about it, like John Lennon and George Harrison, like they've talked about it, they were really into it. I mean, I think it's something, I mean, not now, but I think it's something I will eventually look into in the future because I'm very curious about it. So.
Yeah, it was interesting, her take on it, you know. And I think, you know, you asked her, I mean, is it possible for it to be corrupted? And she said no, but I would say that anything can be. Yeah. It just depends on who you're following. If you get someone to teach you and they can, and they're not, their intentions are good to just train you how to, you know, use it for relaxation and use it for transcendence. But if
they train you to be dependent on them and to, you know, use your weaknesses against you. I mean, hey, baby, it's the good side and the dark side of the force. That's what it is.
Exactly.
You know, the light side and the dark side of the force. At the end of the day,
I'd say it's possible.
Yeah.
You know, the meditation in and of itself is probably not evil, but it's just who teaches, you know, the guru or the teacher or whatever could be evil.
And it's sad, though, because in situations like that, because you're so open, you're so vulnerable, and if you're so, like, ignorant about something like that, no matter how intelligent you are vulnerable to being manipulated, you know? You know, so there are people that can take advantage of that. Like, and that goes in every religion. You know, it kills me when people say, "Oh, you know, Islam is a violent religion." No, they're extremists in every religion. You know, like Christianity has had, you know, it's really been violent throughout the decades. But I also know, I mean, centuries, I should say. But I also know that, you know, I know very peaceful Christians that very, you know, Christianity is a sense of community for them, and it's an empowering thing for them, and they do good with it. They're not, you know, trying to kill people or trying to take over people's countries in the name of Christianity. But there are people that do that, and then they just basically, you know, they need to pin it on something. So they'll say, "Oh, my religion is making me do it," you know.
Right.
But then you also have the atheists. I got into this guy that's like, well, you know, I'm an atheist, and when have you ever heard of people dying, you know, killing in the name of atheism? I'm like, science. You know? Right. But
exactly.
You know, like, really, do you want to talk about the name? Because from my experience with the friends and the people that I know that are atheists, they say they believe in science. Now, they won't equate that themselves with being a religion. I will, because to me it's the same thing. You're still like, you're using you're not, what am I trying to say? You're not holding accountability for yourself. You're still like using something to believe in, you know. Right. So maybe it's not God or Jesus or Allah or, you know, Jehovah, but it's Darwin, you know, and his teachings are your Bible. Because I've met atheists that are just as fanatic, can be just as fanatic and condescending as any other person that has a religion, you know, but they preach science. But I've met really nice atheists too, who are nice people, and they're not bad people because they're atheists. I mean, you know, if they're atheists, fine, you know, whatever. It's not a big deal to me, but I know people that have condemned atheists just for being atheists. You know, it's just, you know, people just need to, like, have accountability for their own shit, you know?
Right.
And stop trying to hide behind religion or non-religion or science or whatever the fuck. It's really, you know?
No, it's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Because the science, and then it becomes religious in nature because it's not actually based on fact. It's based on a belief system, a faith-based belief system.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they run from the religions, and then they go, oh, you know, science, you know, shelter me, save me.
Yeah, totally.
But if you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But people are corrupted because people are people. Like you just talked about the scientists that frauded the AIDS vaccine. Now, scientists are one of these occupations that go into the category of teachers and doctors and people that, you know, are kind of deities.
Yeah.
You know, that people see as deities that are they're innately moral, or they think that they're innately moral, and they can't be corrupted, or they don't have self-serving interests. But that's bullshit. You know, people look at all the stuff, all the research you've done on the people we've interviewed, and how much corruption there is in the medical industry and the science industry. It's like loaded with all of that stuff.
Exactly.
It's no escape.
Totally.
There's no escape. People just have to realize there's really no escape, and you really have to just, you know, follow your instincts, be true to yourself, and use your common sense, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of, what's kind of been pissing me off too lately is I feel like, you know, there's this whole thing that people need to see peer-reviewed studies and science, but it's just a game. At the end of the day, it's just a game. Like, what happened to your son, did you really need to read a peer-reviewed study to know something that you saw with your own eyes? I didn't. I mean, like I didn't need to, and I've known quite a few people that this has happened to, so I'm like, something must be wrong. Wow, I don't need, I don't need a peer-reviewed study to, it's ridiculous. People have just given away their power. And it's funny, I feel like people have given away their power to scientists as atheists have claimed that they've quit religion because people are giving their power away to priests or deities, but the scientists are the priests. They're giving away their power to them. Oh, we can't think for ourselves. We can't use our own powers of observation. We don't have intuition anymore, so we need a peer-reviewed study.
Right.
Tell us what to think, because obviously we can't think for ourselves.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're saying, because they're just giving it away, their power to somebody else. They're not just looking at it from, I know that this is a tree because I'm standing next to it and that's a tree. It's like
I need a peer-reviewed study to tell me what this
is. This a tree? Because you know more than I do, teacher or professor or whatever. It's like, God, do you know if it's a tree or not or what?
Oh my God, I'm in water. Am I wet? What is this weird feeling on my skin?
Right, exactly. It's like,
please, give me a peer-reviewed study. I don't know what to do with myself. It's too much. It's too much.
Right, or like how we've talked about the chemtrails before, and some people will try and say, well, those are just clouds. Well, do you really think that, or did someone just tell you that?
Oh no. Do you think that planes spark clouds? Obviously, because.
Right. Or that in a straight line and like make grids and like do all that. If it doesn't. Was it there when you were a kid? Like, did you grow up around that? Some people of a certain age might have, but I wasn't around when I was a kid. I'm old enough that I remember what real clouds look like. And so, I didn't see that. And at a certain point I went, holy crap, it's like there's streaks everywhere. It's just weird. So, do you see it or not? It's like, oh, but those are just... it's just a weather balloon. Like, whatever the stupid, crazy thing that they say makes people doubt their own experience.
Well, the thing is, too, I think a huge thing is that, Ty Bollinger put it wonderfully when he said that it's not the fact that the evidence isn't there, it's just that you don't want to believe it. And for people that really do need peer-reviewed studies and science, documents or whatever, that's all out there. That's there if you really want to look into it. If that's what you need, to feel secure or to make a decision, that's all out there supporting what we say. But if you read that and you still, think that planes spark clouds, then you just don't want to believe that there are people that have malicious intentions against humanity.
Right.
And people.
Yeah, that's true.
You can go and look up here. You can go and look up clouds. I'm sorry, not clouds. You can go and look up the fact that Bill Gates owns, I don't know, I'm going to say 500,000 shares don't quote me on the numbers. He owns a lot of stock in Monsanto. I'll just put it that way. Like too much.
Right.
Like enough to know what he's doing. And either dumbass, like Elmer Fudd, or he has some intent in what he's doing. And everybody knows how malicious and vindictive and the amount of destruction that Monsanto has caused all over the world. But yet, when you bring up something like that, you know, that people, you know, will defend him and think that he's, you know, because he's walking this earth under the guise of a humanitarian, and he's doing exactly the opposite. I swear it's 1984, I swear.
No, you're right. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's true, and I think if anyone wants to know what's going on, they just got to read those books, 1984 and Brave New World, and then just look around, Or even, you know, if you don't like to read, watch The Matrix. I mean, Gattaca, it's like it's all coming into fruition. It's just happening right before our eyes. So I think we're just about out of time here, so we're going to go ahead and close out the show. But anyone want to check out Eileen Danneman? She's at the Vaccine Liberation Army. And we are Truth or Talk. Thanks for listening. Until next time, peace, truth, and love, y'all.